Hello everyone, and welcome to my newest Let's Play, Zelda II, The Adventure of Link. This game is unique in the sense that it is the only one in the Zelda series that does not have The Legend of Zelda in the title. It's also somewhat unique in that it is a majority side-scroller. While there is an overhead map, like Zelda 1 and other future Zeldas, majority of the game takes place in a side-scrolling view. When you're on the overworld, you can run into random encounters, you'll be transferred to a side-scrolling area. The palaces, which serve as the dungeons in this game, are also side-scrolling. A lot of platforming areas. So, about to get the story here in a little bit. The story does differ a little bit from the one in the manual. I'll link the manual in the description, but according to the story, after Ganon was destroyed, Impa told Link a sleeping spell was cast on Princess Zelda. She will wake only with the power of the number 3 Triforce seal in a palace in Hyrule. To break the seal, crystals must be placed in statues in 6 well-guarded palaces. Link sets out on his most adventuresome quest yet. So, according to the manual, there's a prince. This is not the same Zelda that we rescued in Zelda 1. But like Zelda 1, we will be naming our hero after a departed rat from Marty Mouse House Minions. So, in this case, it'll be Bub. So, but anyway, getting back to the princess, according to the game manual, a long time ago, there was the sleeping Princess Zelda. A king died, and the prince was going to take over the kingdom, naturally. But he couldn't inherit the entire Triforce. And the part that he was missing, the only one who knew the location of it was Princess Zelda. And he threatened her. He was like, you know, tell me where the piece is. But she wouldn't talk. And this magician came and also threatened her. And she still wouldn't talk. So the magician placed the princess in a sleeping spell. And that's the princess that is sleeping there. And she'll, in order to honor that initial Princess Zelda, all Zeldas are named after that princess. So, yeah, the game manual and the story that the game gives and the story the game manual gives are a little different, so. But here's those side-scrolling areas I was talking about. We're in towns here. We can talk with people, and most of the people don't give you many good clues, but the ones who do will give you really good clues that will definitely help you out in the game, so. For instance, this guy, he's going to tell us that if all else fails, use fire. And that's going to be very important. Later on, we're going to run into enemies that we can't damage with our sword, but we'll be able to damage them with the magic of fire. Magic plays a really important role in this game. As you can see in our upper left corner, we have a sword meter that has 1, a magic meter that has 1, and a life meter that has 1. Those are your levels. Each of them can be raised up to level 8, a maximum of level 8. And you raise those levels by gaining experience points, which you get by defeating enemies or by placing crystals in the palaces. So, here's the first woman who's going to give us our first spell. Each town, and the towns are named after what would be eventually the sages, the 7 wise sages in future games. But each town has a wise man, like that woman just says, and they will teach you a spell. Now, it's not going to be as easy as this one. Usually, getting this spell requires doing a little mini quest. But this one, they start you off easy, and we just come in here, and we get the first spell, Shield. A really good spell. It basically doubles your defense for the screen that you're on. Right now, you see it says Shield 32. That is the cost of the spell. Each of those little boxes underneath the magic meter counts for 16 units of magic. So if I cast the shield spell, which you cast by pressing the select button, it'll use up 2 of those boxes. Now, we can get more boxes through magic containers that we find, and we can also increase our life by getting heart containers, just like in the first game. Now, when we raise our levels up, the spell cost will go down. So after if we raise our magic to level 2, it might cost a little less than 32 units of magic to cast the shield spell. Life, as that goes up, that increases your defense. So you'll take less damage from enemies that hit you. And then the attack power means that your sword does more damage. So like right now, for instance, these spiders are taking 2 hits to hit. Maybe after you get attack level 2, they'll only take 1 hit. So you gotta level your character up there. So right now we're in our first little cave. Right now it's dark, but if you look very closely, sometimes you can see enemies walking around. So we see this little like slug. It's a I believe it's called a man, I forget what it's called now. It's just on the tip of my tongue. A louder. And they you can see that there. Also on the overworld here, normally you go into side-scrolling areas when you touch one of those shadows. But sometimes on roads, you'll run into these little mini battlegrounds. So, right here we have one. We just gotta avoid these bubbles. It's kind of tricky, because if a bubble hits you, you have knockback, and it can knock you into the pit. So, gotta be very careful. Now, speaking of those shadows, you see they pop up. There's 2 different types of shadows. There's like one that looks like a little blob, and then there's one that looks like a man. The man usually indicates... Well, the man indicates a tougher encounter, and the blob indicates a weaker encounter. So I'll be showing off all the different encounters, so you'll see the tough enemy and the weak enemies in all the encounters. So here's our first heart container. So one of the villagers said that find a heart south of Parappa. Parappa is the desert up there, the desert terrain. And depending on when you meet the shadow, you will encounter different things. So we had a blob encounter in the grasslands there, so we got like 2 blobs and these like kangaroo-looking rats. Now if we encounter a blob in the desert here, you'll notice that we'll get something different. So for instance here we got the tough one. So in the tough desert encounter area here, we got these little worms that stick out, and blobs and fireballs that fly across the screen. If I get into an encounter with just the blob, the weaker encounter, you notice that the little worms are missing. So yeah, there's different encounters. So let's get into an encounter here. Yep. So there we go. We have, you'll notice that the worms are missing, so it differs a little bit. And we have our little palace icon. We step on the palace icon and we're transported to a side-scrolling palace area. So these basically serve as the dungeons in the game. We basically have little mazes we gotta solve, very similar to the first game, where we run around through different rooms and we try to find keys to unlock puzzles, and like the first game, they also contain items. Now, the palaces also have a boss guardian at the end that guards the statue where you have to place the crystal. Remember at the beginning of the game it said in order to get to the palace that holds the 3rd piece of the Triforce, we have to put crystals in 6 statues. So you'll notice when we defeat the dungeon or the palace, it'll usually turn to stone. In order for it to turn to stone, you have to get both the item and defeat the boss monster. So if you defeat the boss monster and put the crystal in the statue without getting the item, the palace won't turn to stone. It'll still allow you to head back in and get the item. So you can't miss out on items in this game. So, which is important because, you know, all the items are very important. Now speedrunners can get by without getting the candle in this in this palace. That one child in the town, Rudo, said that, you know, the candle's in proper desert, but Royal Town, but it's not, you know, necessary. But for most people, if you're playing just casually, the candle is very important because it'll allow us to see through caves like that one that we passed through on the way to the desert. So we have these Stalfos monsters here, and they're considered big enemies. The little bots, they're considered small enemies. And then there's some enemies that don't give any experience. So there's 3 types of enemies. We saw in the one weak encounter in the forest, there was moblins that gave no experience. And those jackals that are running across with the knives, they give no experience. Now, the different types of enemies are important because it determines on drops. So big enemies, after you defeat 6 big enemies, you have a 50-50 chance of either getting a point bag, a 200 point bag, or a red jar, which refills your magic entirely. Blue jars refill your magic by 1 point, or 1 box, or 16. So right there, I knew that my 6th enemy was going to be that Stalfos. If I didn't go down there and fight that Iron Knuckle and Stalfos, my 6th big enemy would have been an Iron Knuckle, or I mean a Hammer Thrower, which we'll see up here, and they're worth 50 points. So if they would have dropped a red jar, I would have basically lost 20 points, because I'd rather have the enemy that potentially can drop a red jar or 200 point bag be a lower experience one. So if a 51 dropped a red jar, I'm out 50 experience. But if a 30 drops a red jar, I'm only out 30 experience. So sometimes you gotta like count your monsters to try to make sure that you're getting the best experience drops. So we got sometimes statues there. I poked it. You see it dropped a red jar. So that's why I used my shield magic there, because I knew that I would eventually get full magic. So here's these jackal enemies. Like I said, they're the ones that don't drop experience. Now, small enemies also have drops to them too. Every 6 small enemies that you defeat either will drop a blue jar or a 50-point P-bag. However, the odds are much greater that you're going to get a jar from them, where the big monsters have a 50-50, either a point bag or a red jar. For the small enemies, it's a 7/8 chance that it'll be a blue jar, and it'll be only a 1/8 chance then of it being a P-bag. So here we have a room. The bubbles are kind of annoying. You can kind of poke them with your sword and then run through them while they're kind of in their transition phase, their damage phase. But one thing I was trying to do there was I was trying to get them on the side of the screen, and you see where they were going up and down, and then you just wait until they're going up, and then you move forward, and then they'll fly up to the top, and if you're fast you can sneak by them. So now these blot monsters, they're weak, but they're very unpredictable. So they tend to shake when they're about to move, but you don't necessarily know where they're gonna move. So if I didn't go down, like I said, and fight that Iron Knuckle and that Stalfos, this guy would have been the 6th big enemy, and he's a 50-pointer, so I'd rather potentially have the, like I said, a 30-pointer drop the 200-point bag than a 50, because if I get the 200-point bag, I gain more points from a 30, and if I don't get a 300-point bag from a 30, I lose less experience. So, but managing your experience levels in dungeons is very important, because when you get to the end of the dungeon and you put the crystal in the palace into the statue, you'll see the next up there. The experience counter will go all the way up to whatever the next is, the number on the right. So you want to try to defeat the palace with that number on the right, the next, as high as it can possibly go. So for right now, I'm obviously going to try to, I'll skip the magic and the life level up here, and I will just try to get it up to 1,000. That way I'm getting the most experience points for putting the crystal in the statue. So, but yeah, you when you get levels, I should have explained this earlier, but you don't necessarily have to take one that's offered to you. You can skip it. So, yeah, just because you get enough experience to level something up doesn't mean you have to take that level. So, I like to prioritize attack first, especially out of this first dungeon, because after this dungeon, we're going to have kind of a very difficult area to go through, Death Mountain, from basically the first game where Ganon's lair was. And there's going to be some really tough enemies there, so it's important that we have a strong attack to take them out quickly. So, it's pretty good. You want to try to have at least attack level 3 when you're leaving this palace. If you get lucky fighting all these big enemies, there's 2 chances to get a pea bag drop. If you get one of those pea bag drops, you are guaranteed to be able to get attack level 4 when leaving this area. So I got that one pea bag drop, so I'll end up with attack level 4 at the end of this palace. So each palace is guarded by a boss monster. So Palace 1 here is guarded by Horsehead. He's a knight with a horse head. He's only vulnerable in his horse's head, which is the only part that's not armored. So I'm doing very poorly against him, but I'm not very good at like the side-scrolling things, which is why I don't usually do a lot of these games. But you kind of want to wait till he's walking forward, and as he's walking forward, you want to jump forward and stab him in the head, and when you hit his head, he'll recoil back. So even though you're jumping toward him, if you're timing it right, you won't hit him because he'll recoil back from your hit. So after a few hits to his head, he will fall and we'll get a key. Each boss drops a key, which unlocks the final door. And now we get to place the crystal in the statue. And like I said, you'll notice the experience counter will start filling up. We also get a free life and magic refill after each palace. And it ticks up. Now we can get our attack. Now we leave the palace, and you see it's turned into stone. If we've gotten the item in the palace, and we also got the defeated the boss monster and put the crystal in the statue, then it turns to stone. If you don't fulfill both of those requirements, the palace will remain as is. So it allows you to go back and fulfill one of those conditions. So you already see the advantage of the stronger attack. When we first fought those monsters, those worm monsters, we only had attack level 1. It was taking about 5 hits to take those worms down. Now we're doing it in 2. So, and to beat those worms, you have to hit them in the head, and they shrink down. And when they're shrunk down, then just stab them in the head. So. Alright, I want to come in here and I want to show off. Okay, we've got another weak enemy again. It seems like if you hit a weak enemy and a strong enemy at the same time, the game defaults to the weak enemy. So here's another weak encounter. We got these moblins that don't do anything, that don't give any experience, and we have red spiders. I'm going to try to get eventually then a strong encounter. So a strong grass encounter here in the north is we have bots, which are those little blob enemies, and we have moblins, the moblins that don't give experience, attacking us. If we encountered a weak enemy on here, which we're going to try to do, you'll notice that those moblins with the spears are gone. So yeah, depending on, like I said, what shadow you touch, the encounters will change. So we got some forests over here. Let's see if we can get a strong encounter in them. Now we defeated that first palace, so now we're gonna after we get the strong encounter, we're gonna follow this road over to our second town, and that's where we'll end up. We'll end this first video. So here you see the strong encounter changes a little bit. Instead of having those moblins just run back and forth with the spears that are pretty easy to take out with your sword beams, we have these moblins that throw spears at us that kind of ranged attack. So. Now at this point too, you might be noticing that I'm also trying to level my life and my magic as well. That'll be good for the next area that we're going into, so. But we'll do that in our next episode. Take care, have a good one. Thanks for following along. Bye!